On December 2025, the entertainment industry experienced a seismic shift that effectively ended the streaming wars. Netflix, a company once dismissed as a dot-com distraction, finalized a definitive agreement to acquire the legendary Warner Bros. Discovery for approximately $82.7 billion. In a single signature, the gatekeepers of creative prestige, DC Studios and HBO, were subsumed by the digital engine of Silicon Valley. To the public, it looked like a sudden takeover. But in the boardrooms of Netflix, this was the end game of a 28-year masterclass in strategic patience. This is the story of how a company that was once laughed out of Dallas systematically replaced the very system that created Hollywood. Every empire needs a creation myth. The popular story says Netflix was born when Reed Hastings paid a $40 late fee for returning Apollo 13 to Blockbuster. It's a clean narrative, but co-founder Mark Randolph later admitted it was a convenient fiction, a marketing tool to paint the retail giant Blockbuster as the villain. The reality was a logistics puzzle. In 1997, Hastings and Randolph were carpooling to their software firm, Pure Atria. They wanted to build the Amazon of something. VHS tapes were heavy and fragile, mailing them was a financial disaster. But a new technology was emerging, the DVD. It was light, thin, and could fit in a standard envelope for the price of a single postage stamp. Hastings tested the concept by mailing a CD to his own house. When it arrived intact 24 hours later, the prototype was born. When Netflix.com launched in April 1998 with only 30 employees, they weren't a video store. They were a database connected to a delivery system. In 1999, Netflix introduced its most disruptive idea: unlimited rentals for a flat $19.95 fee. No deadlines, no penalties. Growth was explosive, but the business was a cash furnace, losing $50 million a year. Then, the dot-com bubble burst. In September 2000, Hastings and Randolph flew to the 23rd floor of the Renaissance Tower in Dallas to meet Blockbuster CEO John Antioco. They offered to run Blockbuster's online operations for $50 million. Antioco, making $800 million a year from late fees, dismissed them as a trivial niche player and famously laughed them out of the building. This rejection forced Netflix into survival mode. In 2001, crushed by the tech crash and the 9/11 economic shock, they laid off 1/3 of their staff. But they discovered something startling. The remaining employees were twice as productive. This forged the Netflix doctrine of talent density, the belief that one elite performer is worth 10 average workers. They didn't just become leaner, they became a high-performance machine ready to outthink the giants who had laughed at them. Netflix went public in May 2002 at $15 per share, but the IPO cash wasn't their true advantage. It was an algorithm called Cinematch. Traditional stores relied on hits. New releases accounted for 70% of their business. But hits are expensive to buy and demand drops off quickly. Netflix used Cinematch to do the opposite. It monetized the long tail. By analyzing user ratings, Cinematch used collaborative filtering. If you and another user liked the same 3 obscure films, it would recommend a 4th one the other user loved. This allowed Netflix to steer 75% of its demand toward older titles that cost almost nothing to license. In 2006, they launched the Netflix Prize, a $1 million bounty for any team that could improve Cinematch by 10%. Netflix wasn't just suggesting movies, they were systematically reshaping human demand to fit their own logistics. In 2007, Netflix launched streaming. It was a side hustle with only 1,000 titles. By 2011, Reed Hastings realized that to survive, Netflix had to stop being a DVD company that streams and become a streaming company that happens to offer DVDs. To force this transition, he announced Qwixter, splitting the DVD and streaming services into 2 separate brands, requiring 2 websites and a 60% price increase. The public backlash was a train wreck. Netflix lost 800,000 subscribers in a single quarter, and its stock price collapsed by 77%. Qwixter was killed just 3 weeks later, but the damage was done. Then came the real death blow. In February 2012, Starz, which had signed a crucial 4-year deal in 2008, ended negotiations and pulled its entire library. Starz wanted to protect the premium nature of its brand, refusing to let its content be sold as a cheap add-on. Sony and Disney films vanished overnight. Netflix was suddenly a library with no books. They realized that being a middleman was a death sentence. Netflix stopped begging for licenses and started building. 2013 was the revolution. Backed by a $100 million commitment, they greenlit House of Cards without a pilot. It wasn't a creative hunch. User data proved that fans of director David Fincher also had high completion rates for political thrillers. By 2016, they hit the global switch, entering 130 countries in a single day. They had successfully bypassed every traditional broadcaster on Earth. They were no longer an app. They were the world's first global internet TV network. By 2022, the streaming wars turned into a war of attrition. Growth slowed, and for the first time in a decade, Netflix lost subscribers. They pivot to profit, crushing password sharing and launching an ad tier that reached 91 million users by early 2025. They also began a silent invasion of the gaming industry. By acquiring small studios and integrating interactive content, they increased average viewing time by 12% in pilot markets. They weren't just competing with HBO anymore. They were competing with Fortnite and TikTok for every second of human attention. Then came the endgame. On December 5, 2025, Netflix moved to acquire Warner Bros. Discovery for $82.7 billion. The deal was a strategic masterpiece. Netflix refused to take the dying limbs of cable, CNN, and TNT. They forced a spin-off called Discovery Global, keeping only the premium studio, HBO Max, and the DC Universe. Even when Paramount Skydance launched a hostile $108.4 billion counterbid, the WBD board stood firm, urging shareholders to stick with Netflix for its superior financing certainty and global scale. Netflix is no longer just a streamer. By acquiring Warner Bros. Games and a 100-year theatrical pipeline, they have become the most powerful studio in history. Netflix didn't win by making better movies. It won by controlling distribution, data, and demand in that order. They have moved from being an entertainment option to a global utility. But as the walls of the old Hollywood crumble, we must ask, what is the end game? When one company owns the data of what you love, the studio that makes it, and the pipes that deliver it, what happens to the art? Does the algorithm become the only editor that matters? By acquiring Warner's massive gaming arm and entering live sports, Netflix is building a digital ecosystem you never have to leave. Is this a victory for the fans, or the birth of a creative monopoly that no one can ever challenge? Let us know what you think in the comments. Is this the future you want for cinema?